Romanticism. It appeared with the understanding of Romanticism as such strong and helpful phenomenon. He understood the further the more that something shouldn't die or disappear or evaporate. Romanticism can always stay alive as fresh. It's a sense of celebration here and now. The feeling of being enveloped by magic action is as tight, as close as we want it. Magic warms and condenses when needed. It relieves tension and pain. Things that have hindered us are forgotten. It's a concept of permanent, conscious, symbolic meaning, an astonishing maze, which suddenly is opening for you, when everyone is able to overcome and even remember something through thousands of incarnations. Romantics are people of special beauty. They look at stars and believe in miracles. They are ready to do things for the sake of utopia, to put everything on the line. Gamblers who celebrate the game itself. They say of life, you wouldn't be yourself if you allowed cynicism and pragmatism to envelop your life. You are told about the age of Kali Yuga, that ignorance would rule the world. But everyone forms the meaning of this word for himself. Ignorance is letting life become a formula of routine and subordination. The ruling elites impose lies and struggles on the world. Total propaganda of the mechanization and automation of human consciousness with disconnection from awareness. And on the contrary, the surrealists and Dadaists who appeared a century ago, how beautiful were their aspirations to stand against those who fought for the father of the golden calf from the very beginning. They gave us a big carte blanche and task, if possible not to let us all go out. This thriving concept sounded to you like a forerunner of salvation. Indeed, you needed to be saved, and you believed that it wasn't in vain, that it's not in vain to record 1,000 songs for an unseen universe, not in vain to rock and roll, not in vain to go on with different values. Moreover, it's crucial for this chance to come out into this world. Give impetus to your influence, don't wait on the sidelines. Your romanticism is nothing but an inspiring strategy for survival here in a world in which everything is turned upside down. Lost Paradise, Adam and Eve. An old book was in his hands, were read many times for control, manipulation, and hoax. In the Holy Scripture, the facts pleasing the present civilization were specified. Above all, primary, Eve and Adam, who lived happily in paradise as created delights of God. But as soon as they decided to conceive a child, everything changed in their lives. Sweetness of attraction to each other, one paradise way of the world around them. Breed and multiply are not the words of the Creator, these are the words by the tempter. So in our lives we are attracted to each other, led by instinct to create couples with the feeling of lacking someone, and the truth is that such values as family, love and friendship in plastic industrial environment are most susceptible to stress and change. That's why John Zerzon wrote in his book Future Primitive, man still has these ancient polyamorous desires. There was longing for love within the group, within the community, where everyone was brother and sister to each other, where each child had many mothers and fathers. But it's easy to guess that at some point there already were usurpers, those who were profitable to share and divide all this in favor of strict small cells. The pressure goes to father as a breadwinner. Respectively, the maximum pressures go into the mother alarming. The responsibility for creating a new generation already lies on two people instead of the experience of the community. That's why there is no love on the planet and there is a fear of closeness. Precisely because humanity has moved away from the primitive communal order, it went in the direction of passive aggression and alienation, in the direction of hierarchy and class struggle. But my personal opinion remains unequivocal. Usurpers benefit literally burn the planet and evidences each time, as will come real controllers. They come for terrestrial measures to seldom, approximately once in 4,000 years. The human soul lives in subtle body forever. Don't invoke the rest in subtle substances, humbly hovering over the horizon into new bodies for the sake of the destructive love vibrations of anger, meanness, cunning, and envy that have reigned on our planet. The more people to realize this, the closer is the new old world, or the grand strike, incomparable to a labor strike, to force the usurpers concede global defeat. Despite they can't control it, they went deeper. There is an artificial insemination. They do everything to win against the will of those who understood the plan. Humanity needs a modern prison of consciousness, new common body. There was apparently little blood, little pain, little suffering, and of course innocent victims. Of course, I'm talking about third world countries and local genocide. I was greatly influenced by the mass suicide in Johnstown in 1979, 10 years after Woodstock. The party was over. The phenomenon of the psychedelic 60s was the phenomenon of young people suddenly realizing that humanity is moving on a terrible curve straight to hell, and what is called civilization is the only one side of the coin, while the second is carefully covered by the authorities and the clergy. We all prisoners here, held in our temporary bodies. We were very well deceived, or we were too curious and tempted. We've been given humanity program, but it doesn't mean that no one cares about our fate. You have often wondered, where's your position in the huge list of possibilities? You hardly understood the positions of your relatives, acquaintances, and friends. Everything was so foggy and blurry, at the same time divided and lonesome. Still, the definition was important. Although you tried to avoid this distinction to the last, it was impossible to continue working on the experiment without feeling its niche. The niche was flexible, wide, and uncertain, because your work, any work made by you, it wasn't rewarded from the outside. Everything remained accumulated. Sometimes it was excessive, and very strange things happened. Omens, or say signs. Was it worth believing this science? You didn't ask yourself too many questions. You had a passion for the occult, reading Crowley, Timothy Leary, Blavatsky, and others. The issue of these treatises is in their demonic image. More precisely, to understand you will bear responsibility for certain magical actions. So responsibility entered your life for committing shamanism. Everything you did automatically replenished the piggy bank. It was necessary to carefully sift all the parts. Sometimes life hit you back for the slightest mistakes. At times it was very embarrassing, but stigma and pain were the engines of progress. They clearly answered your questions, and at the same time it was just a sacrifice, a self-destruction. Slowly but surely the inner decadence began to build its line before the pre-apocalyptic world. That was the feeling, it wasn't personal, it was exactly what you were destined to feel in some collective consciousness. Miguel de Unamuno wrote about the tragic sense of life peculiar to entire tribes and nations. What was messing with him to talk about tragic sense of whole planet? Mapping the objects and diamond weakness, psychogeography. It was just the sun, it was life, and it was slowly sliding through. You thought about death almost every day because it was inevitably around. You were a little worried about the pictures of the whole. You were fascinated by the peripheral plots of experiences and convulsions of life. You understood that concluding of complex amount is hard to imagine. Diamond weakness still is an important part of your struggle with routine. You were lazy, uncontrollable for your own. You were late all the time. It was a rebellion, an invisible rebellion of the soul against repeated humiliation of the spirit. You suddenly realized what you needed. You've become a support for all of those who are tired, weak, insane, anxious, and misunderstood. Diamond weakness, the foundation of understanding that has all place in life. In your ascetic, sexual niche, you didn't give any chance for hegemons to say that their path is the only right one, given an alternative by your own left example. As a kind of energy cloud, free from interchange with the grand mass, and the global tangle despises you for it. If there were not people like you, crazy dreamers, refined impostors, this world would fall. But you have to do it to complement white culture with black bone. Prevent the elites from performing unipolarity. You are the exact opposite of this life. It's just how it goes. One of the most important tasks for your time on the planet was to find places, to discover the map. You were a typical prodigal son. Of course you had a choice. You wanted to be everywhere. Life without movement seemed meaningless. So you fled from everywhere, and where you stayed for a long time, experiencing silver boats of stability and rolling waves of oppression, left you out of work. That's what attracted you in your artistic career, the movement. You had to move. Every week you had to go through cheap hotels to open and close the door. You made up these pictures, these dreams of wandering. You felt close to it, had a lot to compare. It was a beautiful planet indeed. Every place on it had its own coordinates and character, and there was a premonition of place. There was some kind of memory. Some places already seemed familiar, others for a long time didn't obey any laws of patience and remained strange. It wasn't about people. It was all about the territory and its accumulated energy in the air. You were always looking for something, and even when you didn't know what, you were still looking for just as much. To find a definition of what you're looking for. Much later, when you realized that you were in a certain combination with the idea of staying here, and there was an inner image, the image of lighthouse keeper, which later aided to find all the missing features, you began to understand that your place is necessarily the coast, the rocky coast of either by the sea or the ocean. It was easy to accept as you held it in your dreams. Years later, suddenly you met Guy Debord with his piercing psychogeography. As in the case of Absurdists, the Russian poets or Beirut's, you experienced joy of closeness. Life near the sea was necessary for many reasons. There were those who once led this movement, this phenomenon into their everyday life, will not be able to give it up. Transcendent and soothing in spite of its excitement, it steers your ideas. It's next door to your house. It's calling you to join it for morning and evening walks. You may not notice its presence, but despite this illusion of absence, it matters just as much years later when you miss it. This feeling can be compared with that of the river or lake. The sea turns into a black dark field on the starless moonless night, and its huge energy that has completely different harmonic characteristics bringing different weather, wind and fresh salty air. Salvation, the light at the end of the tunnel. I felt the need of getting through to the hearts of the people, to build a dialogue, and two environmental works I've done over the past year, including a film called The Message from the Garden, with plants closed in Hortus Botanicus and Ambivalence, were just about that. The second work with the ear sticks correlates with the first, and it goes deeper. There is decreased amount of birds on the planet in the last 50 years, the most important representatives of the Earth's ecosystem, especially they are attracted by the noise of human cities, but where they can't reproduce badly because of that city noise. Noise prevents them from hearing each other, they are deafened. How similar it is to us humans. After Buer saw the facts firsthand, he didn't understand the seriousness of what was shown to him. For the umpteenth time, when I encounter this disturbing message about the seriousness of what is happening, like all of us, I have to turn to cleaning methods. Ear sticks and canvases are nothing but a hint and a cry. Urgently clean your ears, wipe your eyes, pinch yourself, but wake up. Stop seeing the scenery of the mind instead of the true state of things and passively supporting what is happening. After all, we have nowhere to hurry. Life is too short and unstable. Something is happening that depends on us. The ear sticks arranged on canvases in the form of two crucifixes, which symbolize the dualism of being in the material world, where there's always an antagonism, everything is unstable and imperfect and controversial. Crucifixion is a sacrifice, but also it's a salvation. It's salvation. On the other two small canvases, also black and white, which symbolize polar forces as well, you can see one is single ear stick. It's a symbol of extreme loneliness, the inability to talk about that worries you, the inability to touch on taboo topics that lead to ostracism. The challenge became taboo, utopian, impossible, and silly, but it's in dialogue with the subconscious roots of us. When I did Ambivalence, I first thought about how, according to the narratives of Tibetan Book of Death, a soul after death, freed from the frailty of body, is still tempted to be reborn again. This soaring spirit takes refuge in the lotus flower, driven by fears and questions. For me, it's a symbol of human being. The incessant disturbed balance between two poles, life and death, the way out of which is the real salvation. The soul must renounce the charms of the body, armed with knowledge, residing in the bardo of birth or bardo sipa. Soul is able to remain itself. Soul is able to overcome trials and join its true cradle. Sometimes it's indicated in the other part of the book, Kina, The traveler may proceed directly to the period of new birth if he's ill-prepared or frightened by the experience of liberation from the ego in the first two bardos. The key tips for the third bardo are: first, do nothing, stay calm, passive, and relaxed no matter what happened. And second, recognize where you are. If you don't, fear will carry you away and you will be doomed into a premature and unforgettable new birth. Only by recognition you can maintain that state of rest, of passive concentration, which is necessary for a favorable new birth. That's why so many landmarks are given for recognition. If you miss one of them, you can always successfully recognize the other, and so on until the end of the session. That is why the instructions should be carefully read and well remembered. The covenants of God are written under the auspices of those who benefit from the reproduction of people on the planet and the continuation of human vanity from generation to generation. Clearly, to multiply means to summon souls to create the craving for the third bardo, where souls will be tempted to go back. If we are accepting simply on level of intelligence the fact that tenor in the body is already a malice and a natural state of soul, modicum carrying it experience and test, but state of undesirable and unsophisticated, again to the same lotus flower, then therefore any childbearing is a mistake, system failure, if you will, but not without reason. The process itself is accompanied by while paying for mothers in the process of delivery. The material world can be perceived as a complex failure and violation, which we have now accepted as the only possible single and natural format of existence. If during the second bardo the traveler has failed to grasp the truth that peaceful and angry visions are projection of his own mind and has been captured or frightened by them, he will find himself in the third bardo. At this stage he struggles to return to ordinary reality and to his ego. The Tibetans call this bardo the search for a new birth. This is the period when consciousness makes the transition from transcendental reality to the reality of ordinary wakefulness. If a person wants to go quietly and joyfully to a new incarnation and avoid forced or unwanted birth, the teachings set forth in guide will be extremely useful. The feeling that ideologically matured inside of you, strengthened for a very long time, but you couldn't find reason for it. In your heart, you will probably child free from the moment you received a slap on the head for some trifle. You told your ancestors you would never treat your children like that. You've been oppressed. Our parents were oppressed by their parents. They were raised in fear. And that's what we took. The camera is close and getting closer. A random point on the planet, ocean shore, there lays the corpse of the bird full of plastic. The world's population has increased since 1968 from 3.5 billion to 7.5. 50,000 scientists from all over the world trumpet global warming that everything is much more serious. Biochips are being developed, and after that, the whole internet, ridiculous Swedish girl. But what I'm saying, yes, I was crushed that I should tolerate it, that I should be more successful, be richer, not paying attention to bullshit, but paying it to constant local comparisons. I understood how through the act and the environment there is something bigger called the system of humanity was present in me in practice. It was flag of state, authorities and clergy. The church condemns suicides and promised terrible agony after. The state puts the deduction from personal income tax on childless people. And even more, you understood how much pressure just put on you. This pressure was unspeakable and indulgent, nasty, civil. I was looked upon as a freak. Hey boy, why did you take a guitar? What songs? Woodstock was 50 years ago, he said to me, and added then, I got a third job to feed my child and wife. Look at this so-called high standard of living. Understand this guy and his psychology. What could I reply? I saw Europe and Asia. I comprehend entropy. Holding stables from Asia. These are machines, just as forced as well trained. Art here, like all intellectual things. Execution for the sublimation of rebellion. Material possessions meant nothing. People who also felt themselves in this like birds in a cage and were not afraid to admit it. I've always wanted freedom. Freedom of thought, freedom of movement, freedom from the Kabbalah, For me it was unclear how it's possible to live this life in the office, working for the boss, and proudly calling yourself an architect, not possessing other goals in life, to be scheduled plankton from vacation till vacation. It's not that hard, to be honest. I can compare it to dishwasher or a postman job now. Though I'm not judging anyone, it's a choice always. I just feel sorry for this, just as I feel sorry for previous generations of poets who were brought up to. Son is not responsible for a father, I read in the Holy Book. I'm grateful after all. I understand that they were raised the same way, beaten and put in the corner, forced to be humiliated, forced to be decent citizens with respect to their parents, just without matter of what happened in the past. I just wanted to say one thing. Read on, make it. In 50 years there will be only cars and surveillance cameras surrounded by barren deserts. It may look like on Mars, where terrible nuclear wars had happened due to hypotheses of independent scholars. The only way to stop the circus is to stop procreation. This is what man experiences when he frees himself from his instincts, by overcoming the code embedded in him, which has combined as a compromised mix of cave ape and the god. Well, you did everything for nothing. It's pointless. No, it's not. But save yourself, please.